Hey everybody, Ben DeBono here with the Sci-Fi Christian talking about episode 2 of House of the Dragon, The Rogue Prince. It's going to be a little bit short tonight probably, if only because I just got back from my vacation. If you were here last week, I was in Myrtle Beach, literally just got off the plane a couple hours ago, a few hours ago at this point, and very late, so a little bit late coming here, so a little unusual. But we will have Ben Kirkwald back next week, probably. I need to confirm that with him. We talked about it a while ago, but double check. But in any case, it'll be a bit more normal starting next week. But we do have smoking back here this week since I'm in my home base. Got the finishing up the Dunbarton Sobremesa Robusto, which is a fantastic cigar. It's almost done here tonight. In fact, I'm going to take the wrapper off. From Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust. So this is a favorite of mine, and just actually anything from Dunbarton's terrific, but the Sobremesa is really good. So probably see a few more of these featured. Highly recommended. Alright, just get that guy going again. Okay, so Rogue Prince, episode 2. I really enjoyed this tonight. It feels so good to have kind of the classic Game of Thrones feel back. By which I mean that it's not about this giant fight or that war or whatever. We're not moving at a million miles an hour. It's more, kind of the classic. We even had a walk in the garden. Granted, it was a weird one. It wasn't exactly, the political machinations of Varys or whatever. But this feels so far, especially tonight, like classic Game of Thrones. I liked the first episode quite a bit, but I actually like tonight a lot more. Just because you can kind of feel the show settling in. We're starting to get used to our characters, all of that. And we had our opening credits tonight. And I'll be honest, it could be that I'm just very tired, but I didn't quite get what was going on during them. At least at first. I think I figured it out later on when we got to the whole scene with Viserys and Alicent, and they're going through the model he's been building of Old Valyria. So I think that's what it's supposed to be, is that we're going through Valyria, and we're seeing the different rivers of blood going into House Targaryen and everything. But that said, I thought it was a little bit confusing. It could be just that I was tired, and it also could be that, Game of Thrones was so clear on what those opening credits were that it just felt a little bit strange to kind of be a bit more ambiguous. But in any event, nice to have the classic opening credits. So we pick up in this episode 6 months later. Not sure if everybody caught that. Slight reference to it being 6 months later, which makes sense because if you've read Fire and Blood, this portion of the story actually comprises a very long period of time. So we'll see how aggressively they do that over the course, not just of the season. I would expect a number of those time jumps this season, but also of the series, because depending on how closely they adhere to certain things, there could be a number of time jumps along the way for us as the series develops. So we pick it up. Viserys is getting pressured to marry. Of course, that's going to culminate at the end when we're going to talk about it. Daemon has escaped to Dragonstone. Now, there's a significance to Dragonstone that I'm not sure was ever really covered in the original show. If it was, I don't recall it. But when the Targaryens invaded Westeros, they did it from Dragonstone. So they, after the fall of Valyria, they went and they landed on Dragonstone and they established their kingdom there and their rule there, and then from there is when they took on the Seven Kingdoms. So having Daemon on Dragonstone kind of setting up his own thing definitely has overtones in the world, though they didn't bring this out in the show, of the original Targaryen invasion. So know that that's going on. In addition to it, and they did allude to this in that great showdown scene, they that it is the seat of the heir of the Seven Kingdoms. So Damon being there is significant in a number of different ways. One of the things I liked in this episode is that we're starting to get a feel for what the different allegiances and alliances might be in this show. But unless you've read the book, I don't think that it's entirely clear where all this is going to go. You can see a number of different factions out there, but it's not quite excuse me, it's not quite clear yet how they're going to adhere into different sides. And I think that's a little bit different than the original series, because you have different players that you're not quite sure where they land in Game of Thrones, but you very much have the Starks and the Lannisters, and it's all War of the Roses ish. And so there's at least two main sides in addition to Dany out doing her thing, where you can tell, okay, we're not sure where individual characters are gonna land, but we're gonna more or less coalesce around these groups. You can maybe start to get that. So we have Rhaenyra. I'm going to make sure I get the names right, because again, too many R names. Okay, so we have Rhaenys, who is the queen who never was. She's married to Corlys. Corlys the sea snake, who's her husband, who's all pissy because his daughter isn't going to marry Viserys. And then you have Rhaenyra, who is the heir. So we have two factions there. We know Rhaenyra, she's becoming a really, really strong character very early on. Really well played, too. I know that as we go forward, we're going to have an actress change there, which is understandable given that we're going to get some more time jumps, but unfortunate because this actress is just crushing it. So hopefully the actress who will play the older Rhaenyra, going to keep referring to my notes so I don't get these names confused, will continue to be as strong as the current one is, because really just a dynamite performance in both episodes, but especially tonight. In my mind, she just stole the show. And really, not to jump around too much here, but in that scene with Matt Smith and Damon on Dragonstone, he's obviously a well-established actor, Doctor Who, all of that, but also has such a presence in this show, and she totally held her own as an actress, in not just with the writing, not just with the character, but the acting was just phenomenal in that scene. So hats off to her. In my mind, she and Matt Smith are probably the two standout actors so far in the show. So we have those two. We have Rhaenys and Rhaenyra, and we're starting to get an alliance maybe forming between those two. I love the scene where they're talking about, her father remarrying, and doesn't this bother you, and like the human element from the political element, but of course it's Game of Thrones, so there's political context, and we can see there's alliances maybe being formed, and Rhaenys was watching her in that earlier scene where she's selecting the King's Guard, and so we kind of get that there. And then we also have, at the end, then Corlys meeting with Damon, and an alliance beginning to form there, although Damon's being a little bit pissy, but that's just kind of his thing. So, but then we have Rhaenyra and Damon going at it on Dragonstone. So it's like, okay, how is that going to coalesce? Then, of course, we have Alicent, who has been friends with Rhaenyra, and they've been all buddy-buddy, but now she's going to be her stepmom, which is just weird. Everything about this is weird. But, for as weird as that is, Viserys definitely made the less weird marriage choice in here. That scene where he's walking with Lyanna, or whatever her name is, the young girl, it was just so creepy. You could just tell, like, Viserys, for as few sexual holdups as the Targaryens have, he's totally weirded out by it, and it's just a great scene. Which, Viserys, so far he's the Ned Stark of House of the Dragon. He's a great man, like a really solid guy. Terrible king. He's just a terrible king. He doesn't know how to play this game in the slightest. So we have that forming. We have, and Alicent, in case you haven't connected everything, though they made it a little bit obvious in this episode, but if you're struggling, you haven't read any of the source material, she is Hightower, so her father is the Hand of the King, Otto Hightower, who goes along. He's kind of the first wave of confrontation on Dragonstone. Okay, so we have all that going on, and that really makes up the bulk of the episode. And if you don't like that, like if you're sitting there kind of checking your watch, I looked at the review of the AV Club, and they gave this episode a C plus and complained that it was getting boring. I don't know if you really like Game of Thrones. Maybe you like the newer stuff where it was moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour. But this is Game of Thrones. It's the political machinations. It's all of that. And yeah, we want to see dragons fighting, and we want to see the violence and all of that. It's going to come. We've already got it. We got crab people. That was nice and gory and weird and everything. So the Game of Thrones moments are going to come. But in the meantime, we have the slower pace. We have the machinations. It feels very classic Game of Thrones. The other thing that stood out to me in this episode that I got to mention is, last week we had medieval C-sections, which was horrifying. And it makes you very glad that you don't live any time sooner than about 50 years ago. And this week we have healing by maggots. So I hope this becomes just a regular thing. Let's just get our taste of medieval medicine, and we can all be thankful that for all the problems we have in our world today, all the things we wish were different, we're not. When you go to the doctor, maybe you live somewhere with state health insurance, and you like that, or you don't, and you like that. We're all arguing about things like health care and what's the best way to do this. Well, I'll tell you what the best way isn't, and it's to stick your hand in a bowl of maggots for healing. So, we may have medical bills that bankrupt us. We may have systems with long waits. We may have corruption. We may have, all sorts of garbage treatments. We're still fighting about COVID vaccines. But you know what we're not doing? We're not sticking our hands in bowls of maggots to be healed. So, hats off to the modern era. It sucks in many ways, but it's not that. No maggots. So I don't know if I have a ton more to say on this. Again, this is going to be a short one. I'm extraordinarily tired from traveling. So we'll have a little bit more content for you next week. But I'm really enjoying this show so far. I think we're off to just a phenomenal start. And enjoying the classic Game of Thrones feel. So excited to see where it goes from here. Excited to see, even with knowing the source material from having read Fire and Blood, kind of how all that's going to develop. I hope you guys are enjoying it, and looking forward to talking to you more next week. And hopefully we'll have Ben back with me. So we'll get you then. All right, guys. That's it for tonight. Short one, but great episode, and looking forward to what's to come. We'll talk to you later. I figured out how to end this damn thing. There we go.